Well, Death's Door is a great new indie title and another that has taken the world by storm. So this one is an isometric Zelda-like with elements of the Soul genre, plus there's plenty of secrets to discover too. It's come out of the blocks at a furious pace, and it's definitely something you should be checking out on PC or Xbox. Well, in Death's Door, you play as a small crow, working for the Reaper Commission by harvesting the souls of the living. Unfortunately, you've been sent on a task to collect a particular soul, and then it's been stolen from you, so you're led to the Undying Realm on a hunt to retrieve the stolen soul to reach Death's Door. And to unlock the famous Death's Door, you need 3 powerful souls, and therein starts the adventure. Well, Death's Door looks similar to something like Hades, but the camera angle and the action is the only real comparison. You know, this is much more of a traditional adventure game where you explore, you fight, you collect items, and you lose yourself in the gorgeous and stylized environments. Like, you've got graveyards, there's ruins, and there's mansions too. Complementing the action, there's plenty of puzzles to solve, which include things like hitting switches or gathering keys and opening gates. And the balance of the puzzles is really, really good. They start out fairly simple, and they get progressively harder. They're never too tricky and make you want to bang your head against that wall. So kudos to the developers here, they've done a really great job with that balance. The environments in the game take centre stage, and you have a bunch of fun exploring the winding landscapes, delving deeper into the lush environments, and probably get lost once or twice. So there's a decent verticality to the levels, which offers up a fresh dimension to the gameplay. So partnering with the puzzles, there's also plenty of shortcuts to find in Death's Door, which really gives you the opportunity to replay the game. You know, there's a joy in exploration which reminds me of something like A Link to the Past and the other early Zelda games. There's a real character to these environments. You know, for example, in the first dungeon, you're going to be taken into a witch's house. It's covered in porcelain pots, and the pot motif is scattered all throughout the house. As you approach the house, you're taught through the gameplay mechanics to break and investigate these pots. And the witch house itself is classically presented in the haunted style. You've got winding corridors and all the rooms you'd expect in someone's house. The combat in Death's Door feels really satisfying. It's something that great indies of the past few years have got really, really right. Games like Dead Cells, Hades and Hollow Knight all managed to nail that feel. Death's Door does a similar job with the combat and the overall feel of the game too, and our little crow can hit and dodge and roll. And it's tricky to block incoming attacks, so combat is often about understanding the patterns of your enemies and moving out of the way accordingly, much like a Souls-like game. So as you progress through the game, waves of enemies get tougher, and this adds to the fast-paced nature of the combat and improves the overall feel of the game. Well, complementing your standard attacks, you've got a few special abilities in each dungeon. So these sections are fairly similar to the Zelda gameplay experience where you have a combination of puzzles and magic. For example, you've got switches, which you can activate with a ranged spell, and the magic and the interactions in the game, they're not too complicated, but if you run low, you simply have to defeat enemies to recharge your magic meter. So this promotes using a combination of attack styles and not just sitting back and spamming magic to take everyone down in your path. Well, our crow has got standard attacks and a smattering of magic. Well, there's also different weapons to find too. So you've got a range of weapons, including a big hammer, you've got the Reaper sword, daggers, you've got a great sword, and you've also got the rather useless umbrella as well. There aren't any direct weapon upgrades of sorts, but you can exchange souls for points related to dexterity, speed, and also upgrades in magic. So an important part of the battle system is health, and Death's Door does have a rather unique take on the health mechanics. So rather than picking up hearts or health restoring potions, there's something called Seeds of Life dotted throughout the map. So they range from being right there in front of you to being hidden away completely, so you may need to hunt down the seeds to help restore some of your valuable energy. And it all plays into the exploration nature of the game. There is one thing to look out for: your Seeds of Life only spawn one flower for health regeneration, so you may have to find another seed and a plant pot if you want to restore it again. Well, Death's Door does have a familiar structure. You know, after going through the introduction and meeting the big crow who successfully stole your assigned soul, trying to open Death's Door, you have 3 options. So you can head north, and you'll come across a graveyard, which acts as a nice introduction puzzle to the haunted house, and eventually you're going to meet that witch. But each area has a puzzle-filled introduction. There you have to solve a bunch of environmental puzzles, followed by waves of enemies, and then a mini-boss to get into the dungeon-like area. Well, the boss fights in Death's Door are a lot of fun, and often play with scale of our tiny little crow. So in the first hour or so, you're going to face off against a massive boss, protecting the end of one puzzle area, and attacks are fairly slow and methodical at first, but you do have to run in there and get a timely thwack in before retreating quickly to jump out of the way of impending attacks from the giant. Lasers then stream from the huge beast's eyes, and then you just have to run out of the way of its death stare. As you progress through the game, the bosses get harder, and incrementally, there's more incentive than the last. It's not quite Dark Souls, but it is no walk in the park either. So after these relatively tricky boss battles, it's nice to see and hear some comic relief in the form of NPCs who appear to be trapped in this forsaken land too. So early on, you meet a chap whose head has been turned into a soup pot and boasts about how handsome he was in the before times, and the moment he offers you soup is pretty funny as our silent protagonist simply shakes his head in a firm no. You'll both set off on an adventure to get into the witch's house, and then once you're in there he says, "Oh, not to worry, you just go ahead and I'll guard the door." And the game does have a great sense of humour, is subtly done, and the comedic timing should definitely be praised. The game looks great too, it's all played from an isometric angle and the camera zooms in and out based on the activity at the time. For example, if you're trying to figure out a puzzle, the camera may swing round to reveal a soul piece for you to pick up and then swing back into the right place once you are done. The graphical style, really, really nice. It's kind of a cel-shaded style, the animations are really, really smooth, and each enemy has its own personality expressed through its movement, which is really, really great. For example, these shelled creatures who run at you only to bump their head on the wall and flail around on their back. The environments themselves have a lot of character too. I really enjoyed walking around through the piles of leaves in the graveyard, and also our Crow Reaper has plenty of character. Leave him alone for a few seconds, his little head will twitch around like a real bird. The audio is worth a shout out too. The general in-game music is subtle and complements the graphical style well. The music can be creepy and subdued, which matches the surroundings, and the music shifts up a gear when you go into a boss battle, and it can really get the blood pumping. Well, Death's Door is a great package. It's a console exclusive on Xbox at the moment, but not available on Game Pass. But I can't imagine it's going to be too long before we see it there, given its critical reception. And it's also available on PC via Steam, and this is one of the best indie games we've seen so far this year. The controls are tight, the gameplay is fun and varied, plus the game looks and sounds great too. Now, the puzzles work really well and strike a really good balance of difficulty, and the only real drawback of the game is the incentive to go back and play it again due to the lack of variety of loot. Otherwise, this is definitely something you should play. Normally, I would say this is a perfect Switch game, but I guess now we can say this one is going to work great on the Steam Deck. Well, the developer was Acid Nerve. It's published by Devolver Digital. It's out on the Xbox Series consoles, Xbox One and also PC, originally released on the 20th of July, 2021. Well, that is it for my review of Death's Door, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to This Week in Video Games. If you want to join the community, check out the Discord link in the description, or you can follow me on Twitter at TWIVG Podcast. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out the other videos on the channel. Thanks again. I'll see you soon.